Hey, my friend. Why the sad face? I want to be a filmmaker, but I can't afford a camera. You have a smartphone, don't you? Oh, come on. I want to be taken seriously. How many times do I have to tell you? It's not about the camera. Look, if you have a pro camera, you can just go and do an establishing shot of some leaves, and everybody loves it. Oh, everything looks impressive when it's slow motion. People just want to be entertained. They don't care about pixels and your dynamic range and your blurry backgrounds. I know, but... But what? I'm boring. True. Oh well. You better start saving. That's actually a common film school assignment, to film a two-person conversation. But you don't need to go to film school to do this. You can do this on your own with your smartphone. I shot this just with my Note 20 Ultra and a microphone and a tripod. Even if you're more of a vlogger than a filmmaker, little sketches like this can really add value. It just adds a bit of comedy and stops everything being so dry and serious. So in this video, I'm going to go through step by step how I created this conversation. Let's get to it. A really useful shot for the two-person conversation is what's known as the two-shot. If you had two actors, you would frame the shot to include both, and this can also be your master shot. But if you're shooting alone, how do you include yourself in two positions? Well, you just have to have yourself cloned. Just kidding. Of course, you have to use some movie magic. It's actually very simple. For this shot, I did one take with me sitting on the right and one with me sitting on the left. I also used my Moment Anamorphic lens, the Gold Flare version. There's no flares though, I'm just using it to get a wider shot, and I'm going to master the whole scene with a widescreen ratio. In Premiere or whatever you are editing on, place one shot on the timeline above the other. Now use a crop effect and cut the top clip down the middle. As long as you make sure to keep the camera in exactly the same position for both shots, and the lighting is the same, it should look like one shot. You can see here the light is slightly different on one side to the other. Maybe the sun went behind the cloud or so while I was changing to the other shot. So all I have to do here is adjust one of the shots a bit, just pull down the exposure a little and make it a little bit warmer so it matches. And also, if I just add some feathering to the crop effect, it helps to hide it. The aim is to try to make sure the performances on each side of the frame are matching, and move the shots around so they synchronize how you need them. What you're aiming for is to create the illusion that one version of yourself is reacting to the other, and this all helps to make the illusion more realistic. So now I set my camera up to film a close-up from one side. If you had a second actor, this would be what's called an over-the-shoulder shot, and you would see the shoulder and side of the second actor's head in the foreground. I switched the Moment Anamorphic for the 58mm tele, which is going over the Note 20 Ultra main lens. And then I had my Zoom H4n audio recorder mounted on a tripod with the Sennheiser boom mic. I shot both these close-up shots in 4K, so I can reframe them when I'm editing a 1080p sequence. I'm shooting with a 16:9 ratio, even though I'm going to crop this later when I'm editing. Because the camera is in tight, I can set the mic quite close and get a good quality audio. If you're using a shotgun mic, aim it towards your mouth about a meter distant, but you could use a clip-on mic here instead. Now I set the camera and audio recorder running, then get into place and run through the lines. While I'm talking, I direct my looks at a space where I imagine my double's face would be if there were actually two of me. It's important to get your eye line right so it looks like you're talking to someone. So just go through the lines a few times. I mean, I'm no actor, but this way of filming means there's no pressure. I can just keep trying different things. And once you're happy, switch the camera to the other side and repeat the whole process for the reverse shot. And don't forget the 180-degree rule. That means you should draw a line along the two people and the camera should stay on one side of that line. Also, normally we frame each person so they're placed on their own side of the screen. So if one character is on the left in the two-shot, they should also be on the left side of the frame in the close-ups. And the same with the other character, except on the other side. Of course, this is not a hard and fast rule, it's a creative decision. You don't have to stick to this, but when editing you might find the cuts feel smoother if you do follow this. So this is really good practice to learn your skills if you want to be a better filmmaker. Apart from the main dialogue shots, there's a few other shots you can get to add some variety. So I've got this establishing shot outside. The window is featured in the two shots, so this will allow the audience to make the connection. I don't want to spend too long on the shot, maybe like 2 or 3 seconds to start the scene. Now there's also this line where I don't say anything. Instead, I just react to what my other self is saying. And this is really important in dialogue scenes. You must not forget the reactions of the actors. They say acting is reacting. And this is actually a comment directed at being a better actor. If you're not listening to the other cast members, you can't react to what they're saying. So your performance comes across as someone waiting to say their line, which can look very robotic. But this is also very important to scriptwriters, directors, and editors. Don't forget the reactions. If a character reveals to his partner that he had an affair, for example, you certainly want to see the reaction. Most likely the person receiving this information is going to react silently to this news, if it's like a terrible shock. For that reason, I've shot this special close-up to get this reaction. Another close-up I shot is just of my hands, and the character on the left is kind of lacking confidence, so I wanted to show that with these nervous hands. Remember the golden rule of storytelling: show, don't tell. Now, get the 2 clips onto your editing timeline and go through both, picking out the lines you think work best. Edit them together to create a rough edit of the conversation, going back and forth. Now, you can play around getting the feel right. Really try to work on the timing of the cuts to create the energy of the scene. Sometimes you might want fast replies, perhaps with one person cutting in before the other person has finished. Or you might want to leave a pause as one of them thinks about what they're going to say, or reacts to what has been said. And don't just cut backwards and forwards on each line. Have some shots overlapping, so the camera is not always on the person speaking. This really helps to add to the illusion there are 2 people. Plus, this is how you would edit a 2-way conversation anyway. So it's really good practice. And don't forget to cut to the wide shot where you think it's appropriate. So as I've shot in 4K, but it's on a 1080p timeline with a widescreen crop as well, this gives me lots of options to reframe the shot. I can zoom in and out a bit using the scale, as well as move the shot around and get my face exactly where I want it in the frame. As I said before, we can make sure each character owns their own space in the frame. So the version of me wearing glasses goes on the left of the frame, wide as well as close up. The version of me without glasses goes on the right of the frame, roughly speaking. This doesn't have to be perfectly accurate, and you can adjust this in a way that feels right to you. If characters switch sides, it's disorientating for the viewer. This is sometimes done deliberately to make the audience feel uncomfortable. There's a famous scene in The Shining where 2 characters keep switching sides, and it really messes with your head. So I just wanted to take a moment out of this tutorial because I think this is so important. When people are talking about bit rates and blurry backgrounds and dynamic range and all that stuff, it's really unhealthy for you as a filmmaker to get obsessed with these things. In this example, Kubrick creates a sense of unease by breaking the 180-degree rule. It's just camera placement, but it's worth 1,000 times more for your storytelling than your camera's dynamic range. There's another Kubrick example which I talked about in my transitions video. Just by cutting from a bone to a spaceship, Kubrick says so many things, and that's what I call cinematic. It's nothing to do with the quality of the camera. Why do you think Stanley Kubrick is talked about in so many videos and articles, and his movies are still watched and revered to this day? Well, I can tell you it's not because he just lazily told his DOP to stick a lens on the camera for a blurry background. It's because he was a master of the storytelling craft, which is what this film school assignment is all about. Okay, right, back to the tutorial. Once the scene has a nice flow to it, you can add those extra shots. So now I'm going to put in my 3 extra shots, the establishing the close-up reaction shot and the hands. Once the edit feels nice and fluid, go through the audio and get the levels right. I aim for about -6 to 8 decibels for spoken voice. It shouldn't be all exactly the same level. For example, when I'm talking normally, that should be a little bit lower than when I'm getting emotional and raising my voice. I usually play it through, and if a line is jumping out and doesn't feel natural, I drop it down a couple of decibels. Next, we need to add an audio ambience to lay under the dialogue audio. If you listen to the dialogue now, you can hear the cuts between different audio takes.
Putting an ambience underneath helps to cover those cuts and makes it feel like it's more organic. Also, you can just put a little crossfade on the audio so that you don't hear the sudden change. I'll grab this city ambience and drop that in. It's way too loud, so I need to pull down the volume. When I cut from outside to inside, I will drop the volume even more as well. We just want it to sit underneath without being too noticeable. It's one of those things where we should only notice it if we remove it. Also, for the inside, I will use a low-pass filter to make the ambience more muffled, so it sounds like the noise is coming from outside. So that's basically it. And you can mess about with the color if you want to, polish it up. It's all good practice, whatever you're doing. Now, we could add some music maybe, but I think it's fine without it myself. What do you think? Let us know in the comments.
The thing is that grabbing your audience and keeping them hooked is absolutely key now for whatever kind of video you're making. So I've made a video about that, so check it out. Link somewhere, probably up there I think. And I'll see you in the next video.